Good evening and welcome to the June 12th, 2025 meeting of the Bloomington Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is made up of 7 volunteers. We have 4 here this evening. We're all appointed by the City Council. For most items, the City Council has final decision-making authority. For some items, those are approved by the Planning Commission. We have none of those items tonight. We have 2 study items. First item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you're able. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Like I mentioned before, we have 2 study items this evening. So item 1 is case PL 2025-69. It's a study item of the Normandale Lakes District Plan update, the Normandale Blvd 84th Street pedestrian bridge. And Planning Supervisor Kastenday, you have the staff report.
Should be good if you just hit the arrows. Okay.
I assume you're Mr. Melquist.
I am, yes.
All right, great.
I am Jeremy Melquist. I'm a civil engineer with the engineering department at the city here. I'm joined by our consultant, Mike Larson and Brian Nemeth with Bolton and Menk. We're here today to discuss pedestrian improvements to the intersection of 84th Street and Normandale Blvd. The Normandale Lakes District Plan currently has identified a pedestrian bridge as a long-term option across Normandale Blvd at this intersection. A bridge would provide pedestrians with the opportunity to avoid vehicle traffic, but also has some pretty major drawbacks, including significant impacts to surrounding parkland areas, as well as, sorry, I just lost my train of thought here. As well as the pedestrian bridge would not provide the most direct route for pedestrians, which may lead to low usage. So this study currently aims to identify alternative at-grade treatments that will improve pedestrian experience at this intersection and will have less impacts to the surrounding areas. Bolton and Menk has prepared 3 alternatives that we are looking for feedback on from the Planning Commission today. So with that, I will pass it over to Mike Larson from Bolton and Menk to discuss the study further and the alternatives.
Welcome, Mr. Larson.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. So as Jeremy mentioned, our study really does focus on what can we do to this intersection to make it feel safer, feel more comfortable to pedestrians. And really the purpose of this is there's a direct need today at this intersection and on both corridors as we've got surrounding land uses that are conducive to pedestrian generated activities with the businesses on the northwest side, the commercial areas, restaurants on the northeast side, and then the parklands, significant trail networks south of the intersection and along both roadways. 84th Street is designated as a priority corridor as part of the city's active transportation action plan. So we know there's a plan here, there needs to be a plan here, and it is a priority location. Because of the intersection's location, its proximity to the major highways just north of here, the size of the intersection, it is a difficult and uncomfortable location for pedestrians to cross. And as Jeremy mentioned, we do have that programmed pedestrian bridge or overpass, but we're looking at more feasible at-grade alternatives that might be a bit less impactful. So staff directed us to first take a high look at the pedestrian bridge recommendation. What might that look like? What might it cost? What challenges might need to be overcome with a project like that? The figure on the left shows 2 potential alignments on what that route might look like. We don't have a recommendation on one over the other at this point, but what you'll notice is that both alignments take pedestrians and bicyclists significantly out of the way of an east-west movement along 84th Street. And what we know about pedestrian bridges, underpasses, things like that, the more you increase the travel time and distance that a pedestrian has to make to get from point A to point B, the less likely they are to use it. So there are challenges with this. We estimate a structure like this might cost in the realm of $5 million. So it is a significant investment. That cost could increase. We're in a slightly risky area with the vegetation, the water bodies on both sides of the south leg of the intersection. There's a high potential for poor soils, other challenges that might need to be mitigated that might make that cost go up. I think the most important point on this slide here is that last one where it comes down to context. When you think about this intersection, Highway 100 is just the north leg of this, where we've got a freeway facility where it's clearly designated for vehicles. We've got pedestrian overpasses all along Highway 100. If we construct a similar structure, a pedestrian overpass of the south leg here, it may feel like an extension of Highway 100. We might see higher speeds, people coming off the freeway and traveling into town here on Normandale Boulevard. So that illusion of separation that might come with an improvement like this might have negative impacts further south. So as part of our study, our first step is really taking stock of how the intersection operates today as far as how it functions for vehicles, pedestrians, the crash history, things like that. A really key thing to know about this intersection, it's probably the highest volume intersection in the city if you exclude some of the interchanges on 494 and the surrounding freeways, really because that north leg is the end of Highway 100. We see over 32,000 vehicles per day across that leg. We have a lot of traffic volumes at this intersection of people that want to get to those freeway destinations. Opposite of that, we do still see a good amount of pedestrian activity here at this intersection. In one day, we saw over 200 pedestrians crossing this intersection over the course of 24 hours. Just over half of those actually crossed the north leg, which is slightly interesting. It is the highest volume vehicle crossing location or leg of the intersection, but when you think about the pedestrians and fastest path between point A and point B, they really want to get from that business park on the northeast or the northwest corner, excuse me, to the gas station, the restaurants on that northeast side. As far as delays go at this intersection, it actually operates pretty well. Granted, all the traffic that gets pushed through here during the peak hours. We do have some failing movements. There is some congestion certainly during the rush hours, but generally it does function well. We do have some queues for left turn lanes that might exceed storage capacity periodically during the peaks, but operates quite acceptably. As far as the crash history at this intersection, it's all very good news. The crash rate at this intersection is significantly less than the average crash rate for signalized intersections across the state. We've only seen 8 crashes at the intersection over the last 3 years. And over a full 10-year history, we haven't seen any pedestrian or bike crashes. We haven't seen any identifiable crash trends due to the low volume of crashes, and some of those high-speed right turn areas also don't have any significant crash trends. So while the intersection might feel unsafe, it is operating nominally safe. So getting to the good stuff with some of the alternatives that we're looking at here, all of these are long-term alternatives where we're reconstructing portions of the intersection, moving curb lines, taking away lanes, things like that. Our first alternative is left turn lane reductions on 2 of the legs. Going back to the point on the high volume of traffic at this intersection, when we're trying to improve pedestrian comfort at safety and intersection, usually the easiest way to do that is to make the intersection smaller. Because of the sheer volume of traffic here, that's really difficult to do. So what we're looking at here are the 2 lowest volume movements at the intersection, which are that northbound left turn and that westbound left turn. So both of those have double left turn lanes today. This concept would propose to remove one of those left turn lanes to create a single left turn lane, which would take away one lane that a pedestrian would have to cross, create a large center refuge island to make that space a little bit more comfortable. In addition to those two improvements, we'd also take away 2 through lanes across the east leg to make that crossing a little bit shorter as well. So advantages of this concept, we do decrease the crossing exposures on those 2 legs. We do have large refuge islands on those legs as well. And you'll see in comparison to the other 2 alternatives, this is the least impactful and least expensive alternative of the 3. Disadvantages here, we're not touching 2 of the legs. The north leg and the west leg would remain as would the high-speed channelized right turn lanes that we have on all 4 corners. So no benefits there. As far as that impacting those left turn lanes that we're reducing by half, we're reducing our ability to store left turners in those storage bays by half. So periodically during the peak hours, we may see those queues back into the through lanes and block through movement traffic. So our second alternative is a bit more aggressive in reconstructing the right turn lane areas with a more modern design called a low entry angle right turn lane. The big difference between these and what's out there today, you'll notice they're much smaller, the radius is much tighter, and the angle at which they meet the cross street is much lower. And that's got 2 impacts on how vehicles travel through there. One, because that angle is so much lower, you cannot drive through that turn lane at such a high rate of speed like you can today. The other impact of that low entry angle is now when you're getting to that yield point or that merge point, you're not looking over your shoulder to see traffic oncoming and finding your gap. You're more straight on, your field of vision is more along the path of your vehicle. So what that does is it forces the driver to actually see and visualize that pedestrian crossing rather than looking over your shoulder to see oncoming traffic. So benefits there, we've got reduced travel speeds and improved sight lines in those right turn areas. We do reduce the crossing distance on the east and west legs by removing that northernmost westbound through lane. And because this concept isn't actually taking away any travel lanes, we're just changing geometry, we're maintaining the, amount of throughput that this intersection has. We're not impacting delay and performance very much at all. Drawbacks here, we still do have channelized right turn lanes in some form or fashion. Some folks just don't feel comfortable with these, and that's a fair concern. In addition to that, what this geometry does is it makes those right turn lane islands, those little triangles on the corners, it makes them much smaller than they are today. The ones that are out there today, while they have their drawbacks, they're huge areas. So when you're sitting on that island waiting for the walk sign to come up, you've got a lot of space and a lot of separation for moving traffic. So these smaller designs might feel slightly less comfortable as you're waiting for your walk sign. Our last alternative here is a modification of the second alternative where the northern half of the intersection remains the same as alternative 2, but in the southern half we replace those right turn lanes with a more traditional design where the right turn lane would be adjacent to the through lane. The biggest advantage here is now right turn lanes have to obey the traffic signal rather than a yield sign. So that gives our engineers, the most amount of tools in our arsenal to control those right turners, whether that be with signal phases and signal timings or with no right turn on red signage, things of that nature. So it opens up the door to do more things as far as pedestrian safety at the signal. The traditional turn lane design on that southern half also best accommodates a future cycle track or bike trail on that leg, as bikes now can just make that crossing in one fluid movement rather than 3 separate movements. Drawbacks of this one, we're actually making the crossing distance longer on the west and south leg. So the impacts of that are I now have to cross more lanes of traffic. I have to go a farther distance. And because I'm going a farther distance, the duration of the walk sign has to be longer. So that impacts the delay and the performance of the whole signal system. We do still have the right turn lanes, those channelized ones on the northern half. And then The traditional right turn lane design has slightly less capacity than the channelized right turn design. So where that gets problematic is on that eastbound right turn lane. We do see, with that lower capacity, we do see some queuing issues in the PM rush hour when we've got a high volume of right-hand turns. So we could see queues backing into the upstream intersection just to the west here at Norman Center Drive. It's not necessarily a fatal flaw of this, but it is something that we'd have to figure out once we get into design. So next steps with our study, we'll further refine our alternatives, make tweaks here and there. We'll take a step back and look at more of an 84th Street corridor context as far as how does a future cycle track or bike trail work with these alternatives. Where do we cross people over to make sure they are using that southern crossing, since that is probably the preferred location here as far as an east-west movement goes. We'll generate a few alternative cost estimates for the various alternatives to give a sense of what these might take to build. We'll also look at potential short-term alternatives, striping. Striping, signage, low cost, things that can be implemented in the near term to get us from now to that long-term alternative. And then last part will be wrapping it all up with the study report to summarize the findings and document what was studied.
And then I just have a final slide here just to summarize kind of some additional context or steps with this process. And so as it was kind of mentioned, staff kind of felt like the pedestrian bridge proposal didn't quite meet a cost-benefit analysis to implement. So that's why we're looking at these at-grade alternatives. But because it's identified in our Normandale Lake District Plan to have a pedestrian bridge, the city has continued to plan for that in its CIP. And so planning staff ultimately made a determination that for the city to stop programming it in its CIP, we needed to remove the reference in the plan. And so kind of depending on your feedback tonight and the council's feedback, the idea is to incorporate that, to remove any references from the pedestrian bridge in the plan and amend that to incorporate some just broader guidelines around at-grade improvements related to bicycle pedestrian safety and connectivity. And so we would also plan, it's on the 2025 work plan, to have a broader discussion around the Normandale Lake District Plan and kind of do another update and kind of seeing where we're at. Just because of the CIP timeline starting this fall, it just unfortunately didn't quite nicely align to do this as part of the broader update. So we're going to bring that at a different time. And so for kind of the purposes of tonight, or when you would see this again at a future meeting, it's really to help frame the discussion. We are just really talking about this intersection and kind of pedestrian and bicycle improvements, and not so much around the kind of broader changes in the Normandale Lake District. That will be a separate conversation later on. But so that is also just some of the reasons why you're seeing this tonight, and we're looking for your feedback. And so with that, we do have just some open-ended questions for discussion around each alternative, but I guess I just wanted to open it up too in case anyone had any kind of clarifying questions for staff or the consultant kind of before we dive into that.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
I have some questions, but anyone else have any questions? Who wants to go first? Commissioner Cookton. Oh, that was me go first. Okay. My first question is related to bus traffic. What's bus traffic here on this intersection look like? And is there any shoulder usage of a bus in this area during peak times?
Okay. Looks like I think this mic is the only one working.
We don't think they use the shoulder currently. That's something we can certainly look into. There's certainly bus routes that go through here, but all of these designs would be, I guess, conducive to bus traffic and maintain those movements.
Great, thank you. If you were to roughly assign, thinking about when you go to a restaurant, You get the $1 sign, $2 sign, $3 sign, $4 sign. If you were to roughly put a dollar sign number on these alternatives, what would they look like?
I like the way you phrase that question. I would say alternative 1 is likely $1 sign, and then alternatives 2 and 3 are probably $1.50 to $2 signs.
Okay, that's helpful. Any other questions? Commissioner Cookton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not totally sure who the question's for, so I'll ask Mr. Kastenday. How is the city ultimately going to make the decision on this? So you're going to get feedback from us, you're going to get feedback from council. Are we the final decision makers? Is Bolton and Menk the final decision makers after their engineering analysis? Who ultimately, or what goes into the final decision?
Yeah, Chair Albrecht, Commissioner Cookton, I would say it's a mix of all of what you mentioned. So we're asking for feedback from the Planning Commission tonight, asking for feedback from the council on a direction, and then, of course, Bolton and Menk and the consultant group working with our engineering staff and planning staff kind of incorporate all of that. Again, kind of like was mentioned, kind of thinking about the broader 84th corridor and how the cycle track might tie into some of these alternatives. That'll all kind of come together in likely kind of the preferred alternative that staff would like to move forward with. And then from there, we would kind of present that with the kind of proposed amendment language in the Normandale District Plan back to the Planning Commission and City Council.
So specific to the 3 alternatives, City Council is not telling you which one we're going to do. You're going to take our feedback and layer that with the engineering analysis to ultimately reach what we feel is the best decision.
Yeah, Chair Albrecht, Commissioner Cookton, that is my understanding and how we're approaching this.
Any additional questions before we get into their questions? We're ready for your questions.
All right, sounds good. So yeah, we just really had just kind of a general open-ended questions for each alternative, and so the questions are the same on each. So we'll start with the first alternative, and it's just really getting some feedback on the elements that you like about this alternative and maybe what you don't like or what you think is missing, and we'll kind of do that for each one, just to kind of help give us some direction. So this first alternative, like it was mentioned, reduces a left turn lane on 2 of the segments to then install kind of median refuge islands on 2 of those segments.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
Based on what I'm hearing as, zero bike ped issue in the last 10 years. Now, are there been issues? Maybe. Crashes 0. An overall of 8 crashes. Seems like a bit of a small problem. Are there other alternatives? I'm just thinking that get the driver's attention more readily, like the flashing lights or things like that, and maybe there's too much traffic here, too much volume of traffic to actually have those lights be effective. But I'm thinking about other places where I'm like, oh, the lights are on, there's a pedestrian around. Is that something that's feasible here?
Yeah, so you don't typically see like the flashing beacons at signal systems. It's usually one or the other. Those flashing beacons are typically for mid-block crossings or uncontrolled crossings. But here where we have a traffic signal, that's the overriding traffic control device. We could look at those beacons on the channelized right turn lanes, since that's technically an uncontrolled crossing area. But being careful to avoid setting precedent on putting those everywhere. It is certainly a special case in that we have such a high volume on those areas, so it's something we're considering.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Cookton.
I have a couple questions also. Following up on Commissioner Albrecht's conversation a little bit, so if the crash data is fairly low, is there an alternative to do nothing, or is that not recommended?
This is a good question. We all wonder that.
Yes, we certainly could do nothing at this intersection and just remove the pedestrian bridge from the district plan if that's the way that the planning commission wants to recommend. These additional improvements would help improve the pedestrian experience at the intersection. So we didn't include that as an alternative, but that is an option.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I have another question.
Go for it.
The pedestrian, Mr. Larson, you said I think there was 200 people observed at the intersection as pedestrians. Do you have a rough idea of what percentage were on the southeast corner? That seems to me to be the lowest value corner of this intersection.
I can't say for sure. I know the north crossing was the highest used, the south crossing was the second highest, and then I guess the two north-south crossings on either side were roughly a dozen or two pedestrians each.
And just for clarification, when you say north crossing, you're talking about the east-west crossing on the north part of the intersection?
Correct, yes.
Thank you. All right. That kind of surprises me, Madam Chair.
What? It surprises me too. Yeah. I mean, that's a couple dozen is not a lot of people. 200 is quite a bit of people, and I can imagine working at the office park, wanting to go to the Holiday or whatever that restaurant is over on that side. But you would think there would be more on the west side for people in the office park potentially wanting to enjoy the park. Doesn't sound like that's the case. I don't love this. I don't love this option. The more we slow down traffic movement, I think the more drivers get frustrated and then make dumb decisions like taking a quick left while it's very much red. That concerns me for pedestrian experience rather than some of the other alternatives. So this one, I'm yellow on this one. Commissioner Cookton.
Madam Chair, I think we call that amber.
Amber. Yes, amber.
The traffic. Go ahead, Commissioner McGovern, sorry.
Commissioner McGovern?
I am all in favor of not doing anything as well. We have low rates of crash. We have, a good amount of people walking through this area. Disturbance of traffic, I think, will cause accidents, and that's where you're going to see a rate that we don't want to change. Everything seems to be flowing well in this area. And I just can't wrap my head around spending a $1 or $2 amount on these alternatives.
Commissioner Issa.
Yeah, I had a quick question and then followed up by a comment. So on the sidewalks that go from south to north or north to south, depending how you look at it, but is there any further sidewalk north of the kind of east-west sidewalk? So I wouldn't assume so because it's the highway, but do people go past? Is there any more sidewalk after that, or is that where it ends? If that makes sense.
Chair Albrecht, Commissioner Issa, I guess just a clarification. Are you talking about on Normandale Boulevard as it turns into Highway 100
Yes.
going north?
Yeah.
I don't believe there is sidewalk on Normandale because it's a freeway. There wouldn't be pedestrian or bicycle access. It looks like in the image there might be a sidewalk that kind of functions internally to the office park there on the northwest corner, but there would be no sidewalk or bicycle facility on Normandale Boulevard itself, kind of north of this intersection.
Okay, so for most people going from south to north, usually turn west or east, basically, I would assume. Okay, and so my comment is, I know when you're getting off Highway 100 going south or turning, right, that lane closest, or the two lanes, I believe it's a double left lane. During peak hours, I travel that route a lot, and it gets really packed where it impacts the other two lanes going straight south. And so if, from my understanding, a lane would be removed on 84th, right? Do you know? Because I basically, if it is, I think that would make that problem a problem if it's not already.
Yeah.
More of a problem, yeah.
Yeah, Chair Albrecht, Commissioner Issa, in this alternative where they would be removing a left turn lane is on 84th Street. So if you were going westbound on 84th and you're turning left to go south on Normandale, that would remove a lane. And then if you're heading northbound on Normandale to turn left or westbound onto 84th would remove a lane. But so if I'm understanding the left turn movement, you're talking about coming south on Normandale, there would not be a removal of a left turn lane there.
Okay. And then last comment, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Madam Chair. Yes. Overall, if, obviously looking at the safety history, if it's been pretty safe, relatively safe, I wouldn't support changing it. I think it's unnecessary in my opinion. I know there's people who have concerns, maybe pedestrians, right, that express safety concerns, which I understand, and I understand, but I just think spending money unnecessarily when we don't need to is maybe not wise. That's my personal opinion. So, as a city, but yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Cookton.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I have some just kind of general comments, thoughts about everything. So used to live in this neighborhood for a couple of years. I would avoid this intersection. There's a pedestrian bridge just north of the image here that crosses over Normandale. That was a lot safer way to get over to the office park and down into the park was to take what I believe is actually American Boulevard, that bridge that crosses over Normandale. So that's a certainly more comfortable place to cross than this, but I can understand why people do cross here if you're working in the office park or whatever, and obviously the data supports that people are crossing here. I asked the question of whether doing nothing is an option. I don't necessarily support doing nothing. Safety is such a hard thing because it's easy to say we don't need to do that until something bad happens and you're going, oh my God, why didn't we do something? And so safety is such a hard thing where you're trying to protect against the future and you don't know something bad's going to happen, but you're trying to do what's prudent to keep it safe so nothing bad does happen. So it's a very nuanced and complicated thing. And so the other thing I struggle with, and the reason I asked Mr. Kastenday who and how we make this decision is because I always get uneasy when we as lay people are asked to make engineering decisions. I just kind of find it it's just out of my lane. I don't have expertise in traffic design, and I really rely heavily on our engineers and for them to make the right decision. So honestly, if I totally had it my way, City Council would have nothing to do with this. We would have nothing to do with this. This is an engineering-based decision, and they do what's best by code and by best practice, and that we totally leave this up to our traffic engineers. That's not what's being asked of us, so I guess I'll provide some comments reluctantly, but if it were totally up to me, I would have nothing to do with this. That this would be an engineering decision. So with all of that said, I guess I'm okay with this. I think I like other alternatives better, but I guess if being that it's a $1 sign thing, to me, if it's only $1 sign and we maybe have a chance to make it safer, I'm okay with it.
Should we go to the next alternative?
Yeah, I was just trying to get that up. My computer's delaying. I guess while this is coming up, there we go. Yeah, again, it's a similar question. I guess maybe another way to think about it is how you feel about these low-angle channelized right turns versus the kind of existing channelized right turn lanes that are out there today. So that's really the main change here with this alternative. If you have any thoughts on that element of having a low-angle entry compared to what's out there today.
Commissioner Cookton.
I think one of the things, Madam Chair, I was most surprised by in the staff report we received and from the consultant was that there haven't been more accidents going westbound on 84th to northbound on Normandale, that very fast. And then you have to merge there going pretty high speed as people are speeding up, getting onto what turns into be 100. And so I do think this design would certainly make that safer because it's so available today that people think they can just kind of merge, and people are going pretty darn fast getting ready to get on to what is 100. So I do like this from that standpoint, but that's a traffic question. It doesn't really have, it's not really a pedestrian thing. So I don't know. Again, I think I like this. I didn't love any of the options, to be honest with you. I was really hoping to see something where there was a refuge island on every movement, every pedestrian movement. But it sounds like that's not an engineering accomplishment that can be made here. So we're kind of dealing with what we've got.
Any other thoughts on this alternative? This feels okay. I like the geometry of it, but I do appreciate Commissioner Cookton's thoughts about not being a traffic engineer, because I am not a traffic engineer. I'm not even an engineer, so I don't even know anything about this field. And I think that slowing down the traffic in these channelized right turns is a good thing, regardless of whether or not the goal is to increase safety or to slow down traffic generally. It feels like the goal here, though, is to slow down the traffic, which then again, I guess, increases safety for a pedestrian. But I think the idea of crossing at a free right for a pedestrian is not an ideal scenario, regardless of what the geometry is, in my thought. Any other thoughts on that one? We'll move to 3. All right, we're moving to 3.
All right, and then 3, again, on this one, probably the main difference is there on those kind of southern portions. We would be removing the channelized right turn lanes and having a more traditional right turn lane on the southern portion of the intersection. So I guess, again, kind of on this element, do you like that? Do you prefer a traditional right turn versus a channelized right turn? What you don't like about it or what you think is missing here? Welcome any feedback.
Commissioner McGovern.
When we talk about traffic safety and pedestrian bicycle safety, I think this one is not good. Cutting off those turn lanes and making it an actual stop takes the focus off of looking for people, because you're looking at traffic coming towards you. I can't wrap my head around this one. I don't like it.
Commissioner Cookton.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I also have some reservations. Again, I don't feel super strongly about any of these, but adding a lane seems like kind of a step backwards here. I think what we could accomplish with alternative number 2 is kind of better than this, but I really hate to use words like better because that's unfair of me to say that.
Commissioner Issa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess this is just more overall. For just overall, kind of adding to what I was saying earlier, if we have, let's say, data on the past, I believe it was 10 years, right? And it showed no major incidents with pedestrians or bicyclists. That is, if we were to change this, I know our intention is to improve safety, but what if it did the opposite? At least with what it is currently, we know how it was operating, right, in terms of safety. But what if there's unintended consequences, for lack of a better term, or things that happen? My main point is the way it's set up now is we know that there hasn't been major safety incidents. And so if we did invest and change this, I guess follow the city plan to the T, right? Maybe 10 years from now it does improve more, but maybe also it could not, you know? So with one we have prior history and with the other we don't, but obviously everybody has good intent, so that's kind of my overall standing. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with other commissioners on that. This one is probably my, second to least favorite, probably. I think alternative 2 is probably, if we're going to pick between all three of them, I think that's the one that I would go with. I still don't really love it, and I think Commissioner Issa makes a really good point about if there isn't an issue now, are we going to be creating an issue? Again, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I don't know. I don't have expertise about what potentially could or couldn't happen here. I have never crossed the road here. I've only walked in the park, so I have no personal experience with it either. Any other thoughts? Commissioner McGovern.
Is there an alternative for, like, leaving everything the way it is and building a bridge similar that the one that goes from 84th from the office park to the lake? Would that be sufficient enough without changing any of the traffic, but just building a bridge that they can get across safely? But again, the rate of crash is so low. Why change?
Commissioner McGovern, are you referring to a pedestrian bridge across Normandale Boulevard? Yeah. Or, okay, I guess that's what's originally in the district plan for a long-term option is a pedestrian bridge across Normandale Boulevard. That, as mentioned earlier, that would be significant impacts to the surrounding parklands and may provide an indirect pedestrian crossing, which may lead to a lower usage than we would want for such an expensive bridge. So that was one reason we were exploring at-grade treatments, such as alternatives 1 to 3 at the intersection instead of the pedestrian bridge.
Okay, thank you. I know, like, on July 3rd it would be very useful, but that's one day out of the year. But thank you.
Any other general thoughts? I know the ownership of the office park is a bit in flux, but have they been engaged? Have they been interested in engaging on this? I mean, they would have a lot of people within their tenancy that they would be the ones who would be using this. Mm-hmm. So do they have any opinions, thoughts?
Yeah, Chair Albrecht, I would say we have not engaged the office park, and I don't think it was part of the original plan, so I don't want to speak for engineering and the consultant team, but it's certainly a good point, or maybe one opportunity to do some low stakes engagement and getting some feedback, as they're probably more likely the folks that are crossing there on a regular basis. So.
Commissioner Issa.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think it'd be really beneficial if possible to do a survey, contact the CEO or something of the company or office, right, and do a general survey, probably optional, but if most of the people are the people that work there that are going to be impacted or have been impacted, then seeing a general survey from them would be I think pretty beneficial too, if possible, but yeah.
Yeah, I will say, Commissioner Issa, public outreach was not included as part of this scope of work. That'll be included later with the district plan update. But that is a good point, that we should reach out to the business park once once the district plan update is ready to be updated.
And I would say holiday too. I mean, they want to have multiple modes of traffic, though they are a gas station, but they probably benefit from being close to the office park and the people who would just hop over there. So it'd be interesting to know what their thoughts are as well.
Bolton Menk Engineering, how do you all feel? Any other questions yet? Okay.
All right, do you need anything else?
Nope, I was just looking over to Bolton Menk Engineering. I think we're okay, so.
Okay. Any other final thoughts, Commissioner Issa?
Yeah, maybe the survey could look. Oh, thank you, by the way, Madam Chair. Maybe it could look like something like, "Is this an issue? Do you believe this is an issue? If you do, which one would you prefer, 1, 2, or 3?" So just
Sounds good.
unsolicited advice, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, in comparison to other intersections, I mean, I really don't know anything about traffic engineering, but is 200 people a lot? Yeah, for an intersection? I'm getting nods. Okay, so 200 people is a lot of people crossing a street. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. But so like, I'm just thinking about like, where else could be similar? Like, what about like across Lyndale on 84th? By like the Devani's and then to the gas station over there, like what's roughly are we thinking?
Yeah, Chair Albrecht, I guess I don't have any other data for pedestrian crossing volumes. I don't know if any of the other.
I mean, would you say like
engineering
much less? Much less. Okay. All right. So this is, I mean, there's a lot of people here, so that's good. Good. I think that makes it important for us to at least discuss. But I do think engaging the people who are actually the people who are crossing here would be good. And it feels like, anecdotally, it feels like it's probably office park people or holiday people and not necessarily the people who are enjoying the Normandale Lake Park. There probably is some, but I wouldn't say that's probably, if there's 200 on that north side and only a couple dozen on the other sides, it seems like a win-win situation to be asking. Commissioner Cookton.
Anecdotally, Madam Chair, when I lived over here, I would see there's quite a bit of apartments on this northeast part here, and so people would go from their apartment to the park. So I think that's part of your demographic.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
thank you.
Thank you. All right. Item 2, apologies. This is a study item, so there's no public hearing, and this will go on to the City Council's study item agenda for the meeting on June 30th, 2025. Next item we have this evening is also a study item. It is the Planning Commission Policy and Issues Update and Planning Supervisor Centenario. Do you have the report?
Chair Albrecht, Commissioners, a brief report. Yes. I just wanted to bring up to speed on your upcoming meetings. On June 26th, more of a long-range oriented meeting with the annual housing report and a study item on HOAs, homeowners associations. That's all we have identified so far for June 26th. July 10th, mix of items, swearing in new planning commissioners, and we have a conditional use permit for in a school that's locating from one office building to one that's next door. Then we have a city-initiated development application, which we don't see very often, and that's for a salt shed expansion to a public works building, and then a future phase for a new city fleet maintenance building. And then we have another study item on the Bloomington Ferry Road corridor. In terms of the new commissioners that are coming on board, Planning Manager Johnson is trying to coordinate some training opportunities for those, or training and orientation opportunities for those commissioners. That's all I have.
Great. Any items from the commission? All right. Seeing none, that will conclude our June 12th, 2025 meeting of the Bloomington Planning Commission. Have a great night.